So this is the Malcolm of 1965. And he's also saying we need to be much more broad in our approach to tackling these issues, even as Muslims. He said he noticed that in the countries that development was at a faster pace, those were the countries where women were taking dominant positions. He said, referring to an African proverb, that when you educate a woman, a man, you're educating a person. But when you educate a woman, you're educating an entire nation. This is the Malcolm that had become very dangerous to the establishment. He had already been surveilled by the FBI, but once he started making that connection with Africa, that's when the entire establishment really saw the danger from their perspective of what Malcolm was on the verge of doing. And given his talents and skills, there's no doubt that he would have succeeded eventually in getting, as the New York Times article suggested, just one African government to bring up the issue of oppression and suppression of African Americans in this country before the United Nations. But that's only one level. Even in terms of attacking imperialism and neocolonialism in Africa, even in terms of attacking what is now the most effective way of imposing neocolonialism in Africa, which is the World Bank, IMF, neoliberalism, structural adjustment model that really holds the entire African continent hostage. I think Malcolm would have been a great ally with his organization and organizational skills here in the United States through the OAAU and meeting with African leaders and devising strategies of how to encounter the neoliberal beast, which today in the 21st century holds Africa hostage and impoverished. That is why I wanted to focus this particular episode of the podcast in looking at what Malcolm was trying to do, build that solid bridge, which, by the way, does not exist today. The solid bridge connecting African American sisters and brothers to sisters and brothers on the continent. So much could be accomplished on so many fronts. And Malcolm was trying to create this bridge in 1965. Imagine what might have been accomplished throughout all these past decades had Malcolm succeeded. Prematurely killed just when he was entering his intellectual prime. That brings us to the end of this episode. In the next episode, we will look at Amilcar Cabral, who led the independence liberation struggle in what was the Portuguese colony of Guinea-Bissau. So that will be episode number 17. For reference today, The Dead Are Arising, The Life of Malcolm X, by Les Payne. The late Les Payne was my friend, one of the greatest journalists and smartest individuals I knew. Payne is his last name, together with his daughter, Tamara Payne, who's also a good friend. The second is Notes for an African World Revolution by John Hendrik Clarke. Hendrik, Henrik, Clarke, Clarke. And then the third is a video, Malcolm X Oxford Union Debate, December 1963. And then another video, Malcolm X, You Can't Hate the Roots of a Tree without hating the tree. And here Malcolm is discussing the consequences or the impact of the historical demonization of Africa in colonial literature. And he speaks how the British, during the colonial era, all the colonials, created this barbaric image of Africa that was intentionally designed to turn off sisters and brothers in this country from their ancestral continent. It's a very short video, but it packs a lot of punch. So that brings us to the end of today's podcast. I thank all the supporters, all the patrons. And if you think others need to join us in our travels examining aspects of African history, please let them know. See you next week.